And just when you think the public apology can't possibly get any worse, trust me, we haven't even hit the red carpet premiere of stupid yet. 1. There's something magical about watching an influencer apologize while sitting in a mansion worth more than your entire bloodline. Exhibit A, the tearful YouTube confession filmed next to a sparkling white Range Rover, because nothing says I've learned humility like a panoramic view of your driveway. She started with, "I'm just a human being who makes mistakes," which sure, but most humans don't make sponsorship-level mistakes. Then came the soft piano music, the perfectly diffused lighting, and tears so evenly timed they deserved an Emmy nomination. At one point, she actually apologized for how people chose to feel about what she did. A bold move, like robbing a bank, and then apologizing that everyone got so negative about it. 2. In 2017, Pepsi tried to end racism with soda. Their commercial featured Kendall Jenner solving centuries of oppression by handing a police officer a can of Pepsi, as if carbonation was the missing piece in the civil rights movement. The backlash was immediate, and the company apologized in the flattest tone imaginable. The statement basically read, "Sorry if world peace didn't taste refreshing enough." Pepsi pulled the ad, claiming they were just trying to project a message of unity. Right, nothing unites people like collectively screaming, "What the hell was that?" at the same screen. Somewhere, Martin Luther King Jr. rolled so hard in his grave, he probably powered a small generator. 3. There's the classic, "I'm sorry you were offended" apology, the corporate equivalent of flipping someone off while smiling. United Airlines mastered it in 2017 after violently dragging a passenger off a plane. Their first statement apologized for having to reaccommodate customers. Reaccommodate. Like the man wasn't bleeding, he was just on a surprise yoga retreat down the aisle. The CEO later apologized again, this time using words that sounded like they were held at gunpoint by PR interns. It's the kind of apology that proves some companies would rather crash into a mountain of bad press than just admit they messed up. 4. When YouTuber Logan Paul filmed a video in Japan's suicide forest, the internet collectively invented a new level of disappointment. His apology was a masterclass in tone-deaf sincerity. He opened with, "I didn't do it for views," which is an incredible thing to say in a monetized video. Then, after a brief break, he came back with an emotional black and white apology where his hoodie did most of the acting. It's the digital equivalent of burning down a house and posting a slow-motion video of yourself crying in front of the ashes. 5. Justin Trudeau once apologized for wearing blackface. Multiple times. You know it's bad when the sentence, "the first photo of him in blackface," implies there are sequels. His apology sounded like a man realizing mid-sentence that time travel doesn't exist. "I didn't think it was racist at the time," he said, which is interesting because history books, civil rights, and literally everyone else did. It was the kind of public contrition that makes you wish politicians came with auto-delete buttons. 6. Remember when BP apologized for spilling 200 million gallons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico? Their CEO, Tony Hayward, went on TV and said, "No one wants this thing over more than I do. I'd like my life back." Beautiful. A man literally responsible for the biggest oil spill in history apologizing because his weekend got ruined. Somewhere, a dolphin choked on crude oil just to escape the PR disaster. Hayward later resigned, proving the only thing more slippery than oil is a CEO dodging accountability. 7. Nothing beats a politician apologizing for cheating, while still calling their affair a personal journey. Former South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford disappeared for 6 days in 2009, claiming he was hiking the Appalachian Trail. Turns out, he was hiking someone else's marriage. His apology press conference was basically a live reading of "Sorry, I got caught." He said he'd fallen in love and then quoted scripture, as if Jesus had written a manual on mistress management. By the end, his career was in ruins, but at least the Appalachian Trail got some free advertising. 8. When KFC ran out of chicken in the UK, the company actually apologized with genius-level sarcasm, rearranging their logo to read FCK. It was the first time in corporate history that a fast food chain managed to sound more self-aware than the British government. Their ad simply said, "We're sorry, a chicken restaurant without any chicken. It's not ideal." That's British understatement at its absolute finest. Somewhere, the Queen probably nodded in approval and ordered a McNugget. 9. Elon Musk once apologized to Thailand cave rescue divers after calling one of them a pedo guy on Twitter. A perfectly normal sentence in 2018. After facing backlash, Musk apologized, but not before insisting his insult was just a common expression in South Africa. Right, because nothing says cultural nuance like casually accusing a hero of being a sex offender. It's hard to say which was more impressive, the rescue operation or Musk's ability to bury himself in a PR sinkhole that deep. 10. There was a time when airlines actually apologized for killing dogs. United again, because of course. After accidentally suffocating a passenger's pet in an overhead bin, the company released a statement expressing deepest condolences for the loss of your travel companion. Translation: sorry we treated your dog like carry-on luggage. It's the kind of line that makes you wonder if the PR department writes press releases with a magic 8-ball. 11. Kevin Spacey attempted to apologize for allegedly assaulting a teenager by coming out as gay. Yes, in 2017 he dropped an "I'm sorry" and a "surprise" in the same tweet. It was less of an apology and more of a desperate plot twist. The internet's collective reaction was, "Sir, that's not how this works." It was like watching someone set their house on fire, then proudly announce they just discovered water. 12. The creators of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie had to apologize after the internet lost its mind over Sonic's nightmare-inducing human teeth. Their response was surprisingly humble. They promised to redesign him. Still, it's funny that somewhere in Hollywood, an entire team looked at that gremlin with sneakers and said, "Yep, nailed it." The apology worked, though, proving once again that sometimes the only way to unite the internet is to terrify it first. 13. In 2022, Will Smith apologized to the world for slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars. His YouTube apology was 5 minutes long and felt like a hostage video filmed inside a meditation app. Every sentence sounded like it was written by a life coach held at gunpoint. "I'm deeply remorseful," he said, while looking like a man who had Googled how to look deeply remorseful. It wasn't the worst apology ever, but it's the only one that could have used a laugh track. 14. In 2015, Volkswagen apologized for cheating on emissions tests by saying they were deeply sorry for the breach of trust. You know, the one where they built software that pretended to be environmentally friendly. It's like saying, "Oh, sorry we lied about saving the planet. We were just trying to impress her." Their CEO resigned, but not before assuring everyone that they'd learned from this experience, as if corporate fraud was just an awkward team-building exercise. 15. When a pope apologizes, you know things have gone historically off the rails. Pope Francis publicly apologized for centuries of abuse in the Catholic Church, which is basically the spiritual equivalent of saying, "My bad, we may have overdone it." He did it with his trademark humility, but it's still wild hearing one of the most powerful men on earth say sorry for 2 millennia of bad press. It's like Darth Vader apologizing for some light-choking incidents. 16. In 2014, a Florida police chief apologized for using Tupac lyrics in a memo about community policing. He actually quoted, "It's just me against the world," apparently thinking gangsta rap would make him relatable. When people called him out, he said it was a communication experiment gone wrong. Translation: he thought quoting Tupac would make him sound cool, and ended up sounding like your dad trying to use TikTok slang. 17. And finally, remember when Netflix apologized for splitting its DVD and streaming services into 2 companies? They named the DVD one Quickster. That's right, Quickster. It sounded like a failed energy drink from 2003. The backlash was so intense, the CEO had to post a video apology where he looked like a man confessing to crimes against usability. The moral? Sometimes innovation just means inventing new ways to be publicly humiliated. 18. When Facebook apologized for accidentally manipulating users' emotions with a secret psychological experiment, they phrased it like they'd merely overwatered a houseplant. "We regret any anxiety caused," said the platform that literally engineered anxiety for science. They'd basically admitted to running a digital Hunger Games of feelings, but with fewer rules and more targeted ads. It's the kind of apology that feels less like remorse and more like an AI learning what guilt is supposed to sound like. Somewhere, a lab coat probably whispered, "Oops, we may have invented sadness," and hit send. 19. When Shia LaBeouf apologized for plagiarism, he did it the most Shia way possible. by plagiarizing his apology. His first statement was copy-pasted from a Yahoo Answers thread, which is a poetic form of career suicide. He then hired a skywriter to spell "I am sorry Daniel Clowes" over Los Angeles, because nothing says genuine accountability like a $25,000 cloud of guilt. It's performance art meets public meltdown, a man trying to say sorry while proving he's legally allergic to originality. 20. In 2013, Paula Deen apologized for using racial slurs by crying on live television like a contestant kicked off MasterChef. Her apology tour included sobbing interviews, vague references to a different time, and an amount of self-pity so thick it could have been deep-fried. She said, "I is what I is," which might be the least convincing use of grammar in an apology ever recorded. Watching her try to fix racism with biscuits was like watching someone mop up an oil spill with a paper towel. 21. Samsung once apologized for exploding phones. And I mean literally exploding phones. The Galaxy Note 7 turned out to be less of a smartphone and more of a pocket grenade. Their statement was pure corporate poetry. "We sincerely regret the inconvenience." Right, nothing screams minor inconvenience like your jeans catching fire at 30,000 feet. They followed up by recalling millions of units, proving that sometimes innovation just means inventing new ways to make your customers spontaneously combust. 22. In 2018, a Japanese rail company apologized because one of its trains left 20 seconds early. Not late, early. They issued a press release calling the mistake truly inexcusable. Meanwhile, every American commuter read that and laughed so hard they missed their third delayed train of the day. Only in Japan would punctuality be treated like a war crime. Somewhere, Amtrak executives probably printed that apology out and framed it as fantasy literature. 23. When the clothing brand H&M released an ad featuring a black child in a hoodie reading, "Coolest monkey in the jungle." The public outrage was instant and volcanic. Their apology was a masterclass in missing the point. "We're sorry anyone felt offended." Translation: "We're not sorry we did it. We're just sorry you all have eyes." It's like running someone over and then apologizing that they chose to stand in front of your car. The company promised to learn and grow, which I assume meant hiring someone with a functioning brain for marketing. 24. After the Cambridge Analytica scandal, Mark Zuckerberg's apology tour was like watching a robot attempt stand-up comedy. He blinked, he paused, he delivered lines that sounded like they'd been translated from binary. "We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility," he said, as if selling the planet's privacy was a mild oversight, like forgetting to lock the door. The whole thing was so unnervingly robotic, you half expected him to end with "human emotions successfully simulated," returning to Hive. 25. When the CEO of Equifax apologized for leaking the personal data of 147 million people, his tone suggested he'd just misplaced a few umbrellas. "We deeply regret this incident," he said, while Americans were frantically freezing their credit like squirrels hoarding acorns before winter. The company offered free credit monitoring, provided, of course, you trusted them again. That's like a thief breaking into your house and offering to install your next security system. 26. When CrossFit's founder tweeted a joke mocking George Floyd's death, he followed it up with the kind of apology that makes you lose faith in literacy. "I made a mistake," he said. "Oh, just one?" The backlash was so brutal, he resigned, but not before doubling down with a lecture about cancel culture. It was the corporate version of apologizing for spilling coffee, while still holding the cup upside down. 27. In 2019, a Hong Kong airline apologized after accidentally sending a plane out with the name Cathay Pacific painted on it, missing the F. Their apology was perfect. "Oops, this special livery won't last long." For once, a company embraced its own stupidity with style. Imagine being the guy whose only job was spelling the company's name on a 777 and still somehow failing the world's biggest autocorrect test. Somewhere, Grammarly shed a single tear. 28. Lance Armstrong's apology for years of doping was so wooden it could have been carved by Geppetto. He waited until Oprah gave him a couch and then confessed like a man reading a hostage statement from his lawyer's laptop. He said he was sorry for letting people down, which is adorable, considering he let them down while stealing millions and blood-swapping like a vampire in spandex. If Karma had subtitles, his would have said, "Tour de Fraud, Director's Cut." 29. In 2021, Peloton apologized after their bike killed a fictional character on Sex and the City. Yes, a fictional man. The stock plummeted, PR panicked, and Peloton had to clarify that their exercise bike didn't actually commit murder. Their statement read like it was written by someone mid-cardio, breathless and desperate. Within days, they released an ad bringing the dead character back to life. Nothing says corporate apology like resurrecting a ghost for brand safety. 30. When the restaurant chain Chipotle apologized for yet another E. coli outbreak, their statement said they were working to ensure our food is safe. That's not reassurance. That's a confession that it currently isn't. They closed hundreds of stores, retrained staff, and still managed to make food with integrity sound like a dare. It's the kind of brand promise that pairs nicely with Pepto-Bismol and regret. 31. After an Uber executive was caught spying on journalists, the company apologized by blaming their culture of growth. That's one way to say we built a spy agency instead of a taxi service. Their CEO said, "We must change." Then immediately didn't. Uber's corporate apologies always feel like your friend who promises they've changed right before asking if you can spot them bail money again. 32. When celebrity chef Mario Batali apologized for sexual misconduct, he ended his statement with a recipe for cinnamon rolls. Yes, an actual dessert recipe. P.S. Here's how to make the perfect breakfast treat, he wrote, as if sugar and icing could erase harassment. It was less of an apology and more of a passive-aggressive bake sale. You almost have to admire the confidence. Sorry for my crimes, now preheat your oven to 375. 33. After a viral photo showed a police officer posing with a protester's sign reading, "I can't breathe," the department issued an apology stating, "We regret that some found this image insensitive." Translation: We're not sorry about the photo. We're sorry you people keep noticing things. The statement might as well have said, "We promise to think about empathy next fiscal year." It's impressive how government PR can apologize while still sounding like they're allergic to the word responsibility. 34. And finally, when the CEO of Spirit Airlines apologized for their horrific customer service, he said, "We're not the worst, we're just different." That's not an apology. That's the motto of every toxic ex ever. Spirit doesn't apologize so much as shrug aggressively. They basically told customers, if you wanted kindness, you should have flown literally anyone else. At this point, an apology from Spirit is like turbulence, expected, meaningless, and always followed by screaming. 35. When YouTuber James Charles apologized for being a bad friend, it wasn't really an apology. It was a feature-length documentary about his own emotional resilience. He called it Taking Accountability, which apparently means spending 40 minutes explaining why nothing was his fault. The production value was so high, it felt like a trailer for a Marvel movie called The Incredible Gaslight. Every time he said, "I've learned so much," a PR intern probably earned another raise. It wasn't repentance, it was branding. Honestly, if Socrates had apologized like that, Athens would have handed him a sponsorship deal instead of poison. 36. In 2018, Snapchat apologized for running an ad asking users if they'd rather slap Rihanna or punch Chris Brown. I wish I were joking. The company said, "We are sorry this ad slipped through our review process." Slipped through, like domestic violence-themed marketing just tripped and fell onto the app. Rihanna's response was a masterclass in public humiliation. She told her fans to delete Snapchat, and billions in market value vanished overnight. It was the first apology in history that came with a stock crash. Somewhere, an intern probably whispered, "Should we have not done that?" before being escorted into witness protection. 37. When Popeyes ran out of chicken sandwiches in 2019, their apology was basically, "Oops, we didn't expect everyone to lose their minds." The internet descended into chaos. People were selling sandwiches on eBay for $100, and grown adults were fighting in drive-thrus like it was Mad Max. Beyond the biscuit, Popeyes tweeted, "We're sorry, we're working to bring them back soon," which was less an apology and more a national emergency broadcast. By the time the sandwiches returned, the apology had turned into a redemption arc. Fast food had achieved religion. 38. In 2020, when a Zoom meeting between a company and a Texas lawyer went viral because the man's camera filter turned him into a cat, his apology was perfect. "I'm not a cat." A modern haiku. The pure panic in his voice carried more emotion than any Oscar speech. No notes, no PR coach, just a man fighting for his professional dignity while trapped inside a digital kitten. It wasn't an apology for behavior. It was an apology for existence in the 21st century. Shakespeare could never. 39. When British Prime Minister Boris Johnson apologized for throwing lockdown parties at his office, he used the phrase, "I believed it was a work event." Right, because nothing says professional productivity like wine, cake, and disco lights during a national emergency. The apology sounded like a child explaining why the house is on fire. He said he was sorry for not realizing the rules applied to everyone, which is quite a revelation for a man whose literal job was making the rules. Somewhere, even the virus rolled its eyes. 40. In 2023, Twitch apologized for changing its revenue share with creators by releasing a 10-page statement that somehow managed to say nothing. It was like reading a ransom note written by ChatGPT. They said the changes were to support long-term sustainability, which is corporate code for "we're taking more of your money but in a way that sounds green." The apology ended with, "We value our creators," which feels less convincing when paired with a giant middle finger made of legal jargon. It's impressive how a company known for streaming can still fail to read the room. 41. When celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay apologized for yelling at contestants, he said, "I'm passionate, not mean." That's like calling a shark enthusiastically misunderstood. His apology came after years of verbally vaporizing chefs on live TV, and yet people forgave him because, frankly, the man makes it look like art. The irony is that his version of sorry sounded exactly like an insult. "I was too harsh," he growled, in the tone of someone about to yell, "You donkey," again. No one believed it, but we didn't want him to stop either. Rage that good deserves a Michelin star. 42. When FTX collapsed in 2022, its founder Sam Bankman-Fried apologized on Twitter with the immortal phrase, "I messed up." That's one way to describe losing $8 billion. It was less an apology and more of a shrug from a man who looked like he'd just woken up in the wrong universe. "I didn't mean to commit fraud" might be the most relatable, unrelatable statement in financial history. He said he'd do better, as if he planned to respawn and try again. Somewhere, Bernie Madoff was probably slow clapping. 43. In 2020, a German museum apologized after displaying a banana duct taped to a wall as art, only for a visitor to eat it. The museum said, "We are sorry the piece was misunderstood." Misunderstood? It was eaten. The guy didn't misunderstand. He got hungry. It's hard to feel bad for an establishment that literally put lunch on a pedestal. The apology made it sound like eating the banana violated some sacred cultural law. Meanwhile, the artist probably just shrugged and taped another one up. Infinite fruit, infinite stupidity. 44. When the CEO of a crypto startup lost millions in investor money by gambling it away on Dogecoin, his apology began with, "I let my enthusiasm get the best of me." That's the kind of sentence you expect before a confession about karaoke, not financial ruin. He said, "I thought I could win it back," which is the official motto of every guy in Vegas holding a divorce in one hand and a vodka cranberry in the other. It's almost poetic. Technology meets delusion in a single line of pure human error. 45. When the New York Times apologized for running a Nazi-sympathetic headline in 2017, they said, "It did not meet our standards," which is fascinating because the headline existed. That's like McDonald's saying, "We're sorry you got food poisoning. That's not part of our recipe." The apology felt like a reluctant sigh from a teacher forced to admit they graded their own test wrong. If irony had a Pulitzer, this one would have won it. 46. When Meta's AI chatbot started spouting conspiracy theories and racism, the company issued an apology saying it reflects data patterns from the internet. So basically, sorry our robot is a jerk, but have you met humans? It's hard to tell what's scarier, that they built a digital mirror of society, or that it immediately started acting like your worst Facebook uncle. Somewhere, Skynet was watching, taking notes, and whispering. Amateurs. 47. In 2023, Balenciaga apologized for releasing an ad campaign featuring children holding bondage-themed teddy bears. Their statement was the verbal equivalent of throwing a match on a gas leak. "We're sorry if this was interpreted incorrectly." Interpreted incorrectly. The only way to misinterpret that ad is to be legally blind. The apology sounded like it was written by a designer who'd been trapped in a luxury cave for 20 years. It's the kind of moment that proves fashion really does live in its own separate dimension, one where common sense isn't allowed past the velvet rope. 48. When OceanGate's Titanic submersible imploded, the company's CEO's previous apology resurfaced. The one where he bragged about not hiring experienced engineers because they were too old. He said he wanted innovators. Turns out, experience might have been worth the investment. It's the only apology that came before the tragedy, a sort of preemptive oops from the afterlife. Honestly, if the Titanic had Wi-Fi, it would have tweeted, "Bro, really?" 49. When Elon Musk took over Twitter and immediately fired half the staff, his apology was, "There's no choice." Translation: I made a choice. He then tweeted a picture of himself sleeping at headquarters, like a billionaire martyr on a beanbag. Every sorry since has come with an emoji, and the kind of energy that screams, "I regret nothing." It's impressive, really. The man can run multiple companies and still find time to post 3 a.m. memes about free speech while Rome burns behind him. 50. In 2021, McDonald's China apologized for an advertisement that banned black people from entering one of its locations, claiming it was an isolated misunderstanding. Right, racism, the ultimate mix-up. Their apology was so sterile, it could have been copy-pasted from a malfunctioning HR robot. They said it did not reflect our values, which is corporate for "we got caught." Somewhere, Ronald McDonald probably face-palmed so hard his wig slipped off. 51. And finally, the greatest public apology of all time belongs to none other than the year 2020 itself. Remember that one? Fires, plagues, murder hornets, and Tiger King? If 2020 ever released a statement, it'd probably read, "We regret any inconvenience caused." The world shut down, economies crashed, and yet somehow influencers still apologized worse. It's poetic, really. 12 straight months of disaster, capped off with humanity collectively saying, "We're sorry, but we do it again." The ultimate apology, not for what happened, but for the fact that we're clearly not done making it worse. Mic dropped. Curtain closed. Civilization. Please hold for further apologies. Drop your vote in the comments. Or better yet, apologize for something dumber you've seen. Hit like, hit subscribe, and prepare yourself, because the next batch of disasters is probably already drafting its apology.